Okay, folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier, just leaving the wonderful movie theater. Saw a pretty good horror film tonight. I thought it was good. Imaginary. Should you go see it? Should you go not? I often say this, and it's often true. If you're a horror fan, I'd say yes, go see it. If you're not, don't. I think for the horror aficionados who pretty much see all the horror films that they can, this one won't disappoint. If you're not into horror, I don't think it's that good that a non-horror genre fan should feel compelled to go see it. There are several horror cliches in this film and some new ones. This is a Lionsgate Blumhouse co-production, apparently, filmed in New Orleans, Louisiana. So what's the story all about? Well, we kind of start off hot. Spoilers. We start off hot with some action, some activity. I typically like horror films that have like the moment before, played out. Like give me some suspense, maybe a couple of fake scary moments before we get into shit. This one doesn't do that. We kind of immediately get thrown into this scene with this lady, Jessica. Once again, it's really not discussed in the film. Maybe it's subtext, maybe it's not. It could be a generational thing. It is, Jessica is the stepmother to these children. The father of these children is some type of British kind of, Midland rock star. Like they don't say how famous he is, but he's a guy in a band at least. The band might be called the Walkmen because he has a T-shirt on at one point that's called the Walkmen. And the mother, the biological mother of these women, these white girls, there's two daughters. She is not mentally capacitated. She is incapacitated, and there's a backstory with her that gets revealed throughout the proceedings. But basically, the ex-wife at some point went insane, violent, and she's been institutionalized and she's out of the picture. At least that's what we're led to believe. And so dad, meanwhile, has romanced this other woman, Jessica, who one might say African American. So we do have this interracial element to this movie, but it's like I said, it's not really discussed. And this is where, everyone sees, you see the front of my hand, I see the back of my hand. Except right now I'm seeing also the front of my hand because of the fucking phone. But basically, if you come from generations of which interracial dating was still a thing and people got all excited about it, then that would have some type of meaning. And if you're probably a younger person where everybody does whatever the fuck they want, then you probably don't care. It probably means nothing. And I've noticed that that is a generational thing because as society progresses and people are more open-minded and there's less hang-ups and less bigotry, we see more and more interracial relationships in films that aren't even discussed. And, back in the day, if there were to be an interracial relationship, which for a long time there were not in film or television, but if there were to be, then that would be the whole fucking movie. Like, that would be the fucking story. That would be it. But now we've progressed, thankfully, to the point where we can have these interracial couples, and if anything, it's subtext, and, or for some viewers, it's no text, because it doesn't resonate as there being any type of issue. However, Blumhouse, I believe Get Out, the big film from about 7 or 8 years ago, I believe Get Out was associated with Blumhouse. And that obviously brought some of these racial issues, interracial dating, the dark side, so to speak, because the black man is seduced by the white woman. Why am I mentioning Get Out? I think there is a Get Out reference in this movie. Now, basically, it's just a line of dialogue where Jessica screams to Taylor, the older of the two stepdaughters, "Get out!" But it's kind of, I thought, maybe is this a little shot out to a previous work? Or maybe it's just a fucking line of dialogue. Also, for those of you that have been watching at home, I'm counting the times in major motion pictures when you hear the line, "Are you okay?" And the other variant of that could be, "Are you all right?" And in this one, I only counted one, "Are you all right?" So that's just kind of fun. If you go to the movies these days, try to see all the times or remember all the times or look for or listen for the line of dialogue, "Are you okay?" Because it's very lazy writing, I think, and so forth. So anyway, going back to this film, a lot of horror film cliches, but then some new shit. The absentee father, the father's kind of half there, half not. The stepmother, typically we see in films the evil stepmother. There's been a few movies, I think, going way back, Julia Roberts' Stepmom, where she's the stepmother to a couple of brats that the original mother is dying off, I think played by Susan Sarandon. But in this film, the human element, see what I like, a horror film should have like the human story and then it should have like the horror story, right? So in this film, the family story, the human story is the struggle of the stepmother to be loved and respected by these children that are not her biological children, but she's married the husband there, and now, more or less she's taking care of these kids. And what does she have in common? Well, as a young child, apparently, our friend Jessica, she was burned, quite literally, by the evil, and her father somehow got institutionalized. That all gets revealed, and she has this serious burn mark on her arm, and the youngest child, Alice, has a burn mark on her arm. Now, these names I thought were somewhat interesting. Obviously, we'll see as the film progresses that the little girl was kind of the centerpiece of this movie. I mean, there's a lot of centerpieces. Jessica, the stepmother, is the center character, but also the youngest daughter is too. The precocious child who's in touch with the imagination manifested as this fucking teddy bear. But little Alice, I thought, was obviously a reference to Alice in Wonderland. Jessica, bit of a stretch, but was Jessica, the stepmother, was that a reference to Jessica Rabbit? I mean, I just, that's all I could think of, but maybe it was just a reference, because wasn't there a fucking rabbit in Alice in Wonderland? So was Jessica, her first name, a reference to Jessica Rabbit? It seems kind of weak. Maybe it was just the character's name, and there's no deeper meaning to it. And then the daughter, the 15-year-old older daughter, kind of a cliche horror film character, the older sister who, wearing the rock and roll t-shirt and the cut-up jeans and, and flirting with the boy next door. Her character was named Taylor. Was that a reference to Taylor Swift? Just like every white teenage girl is now Taylor Swift. So I don't know. I really don't. But then you have like the haunted house or the house with a history. Now here's the big magical what if. The family here moves into Jessica's house or Jessica's family house because they have more room in this house. But why has she held on to this house if this was the house of horror from her childhood, where basically her father went insane, trying to sacrifice for her and all this shit. And in the meantime, Jessica has become a wonderful children's author and so forth. And, some of that manifests in this film. So at times there was like 14 pounds of shit in a 10-pound bag in this thing. All these elements, but in some ways it really worked. Now, I will say this. Typically, when I do these movie reviews and I say how great the kid actors were, no offense, I don't think any of the acting was particularly grounded or particularly awesome in this film. I think all the effects were. I think the story was pretty cool, but I'm not gonna, I've seen other films with kid actors, like the, what was the fucking thing from a couple of years ago? God, Orphan, like the Orphan movies, like that kid was pretty creepy, and so forth. But the kid, I mean, they weren't bad. They were cute. I mean, the little girl, but I mean, she just wasn't. believable in some regard. Like you basically felt like I felt like I was watching an 80s horror, 80s 90s horror. I could be wrong, but I think this one was listed as PG-13, which was interesting. It did feel R-rated to me. There was a lot of, violence, and as you know, if you watched my horror film reviews, gouging of hands and extremities, like hands and feet, when those get cut up and gouged, it upsets me. So I'm not sure why this would be PG-13. I could be misremembering, but I thought it said PG-13 for this one. There's this other element. Like I said, it's all subtext. Maybe I'm just looking for stuff that's not there. The black lady having to clean up the mess of the white lady. The white biological mother basically was, possessed or psychotic or whatever, and she's abused and tormented her kids, and now the black lady has to come in and fix everything. Is that a metaphor for our society, with all these Karens ruining everything, and then other people have to come in and clean up the mess? You tell me. I'm just thinking. What else? Like I said, the absentee father. There's other cliches. This movie was a fuckload better, I thought, than Five Nights at Freddy. And I did see Swim Night again, and I liked Swim Night more the second time I saw it. But I was seeing like a pattern, because I think Swim Night was Blumhouse, and I've seen it seems like every fucking horror film is Blumhouse now. I'm seeing this pattern of, like, there needs to be a sacrifice. Like, that was the whole thing with Swim Night, and it's kind of the whole thing with this. Someone has to sacrifice in order for the other characters to live. So I don't know. These thoughts permeate my mind, and I'm just social commentary. But it occurred to me, like with this audience tonight, typically when I see, that's why there was this movie last summer called, I believe it was called The Blackness, which was an all mostly African-American cast horror film, kind of not a parody so much, but a little bit of a parody, basically making the point that, that black people really love, this is a stereotype, but my experience would say this, because I go to the movies all the time, and I'm aware of the audiences, because I'm in the theater, assholes. So no hashtag on me tonight, you fucks. But from my experience, a lot of times I go to horror films, especially on the weekends. It's often with the horror films, often an African-American dominated audience, quite often, okay? And it's kind of like the reverse of an NBA game. Like, you go to the NBA arena, and it's mostly these rich white assholes paying to see the basketball players, who are typically African-American assholes. And in the movie theater, it's the opposite. It's the African-American people are watching the white people get killed by zombies or killed by monsters or ghosts or whatever the fuck. So it's kind of nice to see in this movie that integration rather than segregation. And, you might be saying, well, gee whiz, Mike, why are you thinking about all these issues? Well, I don't know, because I'm aware of our society and I watch YouTube. So all these things are on my mind, you fucks. So, but in this particular movie, we have some nice integration. Like, we don't have an all-white cast. We don't have an all-black cast. This lady, the stepmother, is trying her best to raise these precocious white children. And I'm not sure what's in it for her, to be honest with you, because this British guy, the husband, is not terribly attractive or terribly interesting. So why would she be so fascinated by him? I don't know. But, that's why I said this is not a perfect film. I did find it to be enjoyable, but if you're really going to look at the storyline here, this is not, that great in some regard. Well, I think the fun of the movie starts, the fun and the scariness starts when they go into the imagination land, where it really is like this demented Alice in Wonderland place. You have the fucking teddy bear, has like a fucking portrait of the goddamn teddy bear. And then there's like the evil version of the teddy bear, where he's all evil and scary. And that was good. And the crazy old white bitch who lives next door, and she claims to be the babysitter of Jessica. See, that's the whole thing. Like, it was a stretch for me to say that Jessica doesn't remember enough about her childhood, despite the fact that she's got a fucking permanent burn on her arm. because of what she went through in this house, 20 or 30 years earlier. She's coming back to live in that house and bring her husband and her stepchildren into this house. You kind of lose me on that. And maybe I missed something. Or did Jessica not remember her own childhood? That seemed very odd to me. Like, that's a gaping hole in this fucking Swiss cheese of a movie. It's like, why, if you had a horrible childhood experience in a house, why would you bring other people into that house? Why would you bring other people into your horrible experience of a house, okay? Made no sense. So that's about it, folks. I mean, the movie was fine. It was good. I mean, I would probably give it a nice 4 stars. It was an enjoyable film. I'm trying to think if there's other things that I caught. I can't remember the fucking husband's name. The crazy old white lady next door. For some reason, they kept talking about, imagination and shit like that in this movie, and it made me think of the ride Figment, the Imagination, which keeps reminding me, that's at Epcot. I started watching this fucking YouTube video, I think it was Yesterworld or Defunctland or some shit, where he's got like this story about the fucking Figment, the Imagination ride, and I'm not sure, maybe I've already seen that fucking video, so who knows. What else? I don't know. Overall, it's a good movie. Also, if you stick around, I did stick around for the end credits. I don't know why. But they were singing, like, it's got this really kind of haunting song, like, dun, 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 dun. It's the Chauncey, the fucking teddy bear theme song. And if you stick around for the end credits, folks, they have the lyrics to Chauncey's song. So it's like, Chauncey, Chauncey, the teddy bear. So I think in the goddamn film, you hear like the fucking musical version. Dun, 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 dun. But if you want to hear like the Chauncey song with lyrical content, you have to stick around for the end credits, okay? So overall, I give this a big thumbs up. I mean, look, you have to judge these movies. For instance, last night I saw Dune 2, and I gave that like 3 stars. And it's like, yes, pound for pound, there's a hell of a lot more work in Dune 2 than there was in the Chauncey fucking movie, in this imaginary fucking movie. And, there's more money in Dune 2, and it's a bigger epic story, and it's going to make more money and all that horse shit. But which film was more enjoyable to watch? Dune 2, they forgot everything but the smile. They forgot everything about the enjoyment of watching the goddamn movie. Yes, you have Hans Zimmer with his epic score, and you have Miles, or not even Miles, you have Pretty Boy Floyd, whatever the fuck, whatever the fucking actor's name is, and Zendaya, and all these assholes that we're supposed to know and give a shit about. In this, it's a bunch of no-names. At least I didn't know who any of these people were, these actors. And but I thought, this was a more enjoyable experience, okay? So yes, Dune 2 is a bigger, more epic movie, and more assholes will go see it. But for this film, I thought it was more enjoyable, okay? So that's it. If you want to watch my fucking movies, you say, well, gee whiz, Mike, you're such an expert on cinema. Why don't you make movies? Well, assholes, I do. So you just have to go to One Man and a Camera Films. It's the number 1. And I had to fucking spell this out for somebody the other day. All you do is you put spaces between the words. The numeral 1, like a 1, space, man, space, and, space, a, space, camera, space, films. One Man and a Camera Films on YouTube. If you cram all the fucking words together, you're not going to find anything. I mean, it's like you have to walk people through every goddamn thing, don't you? No offense to the individual because he did subscribe, but I'm just trying to be honest with you. Like, when people say words, it's kind of understood that there's a space in between the words, at least in my experience. And if you're thinking, well, gee whiz, Mike, you're such a good film analyzer, I'd really like you to talk about pro wrestling all the time. Well, then you can just go to One Pro Wrestling. It's 1 space pro space wrestling space Amber fucking signed, which is the and symbol, space as sports space fan, okay? One Pro Wrestling and sports fan. Then you can see all that. my fucking takes on pro wrestling and sports, and you're saying, well, gee whiz, Mike, I really want to see your visual art because I'm such an artistically minded YouTube watcher. I want to see what you do with acrylics on canvas board. Well, fine, asshole. Then you just go to one space, artist space, Mike space, Messier space, okay? So you got it. You got all these goddamn things now. You get all your assignments. Okay, folks. So good movie. Whoever the fuck made it. Good job.